Hey Visionaries, welcome back to the Your Biggest Vision Show. I'm your host, Leah Gervais, and I am very excited, honored, and grateful to have Jess Anson with us here today. Jess, it means so much to me, and she's an incredible story. So hi, Jess. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Leah. Thanks for having me.
It's truly my pleasure. So Jess is here to share so much with you guys. She has a story of entrepreneurship that was really born out of a challenge, a really difficult thing that she had to overcome in her life, something that she was kind of unfairly dealt. And I know that so many of us can relate to that in one sense or another. Jess is now a private yoga instructor here in New York City. She is also a coach for women. So she has a wonderful story. She does really important work, and she's here to tell us a little bit about both. So Jess, why don't you start, let's rewind a little bit. What was your childhood like, and what about your childhood do you think fed into what you're doing now?
So, I grew up a pretty normal childhood, I would say. I grew up on Long Island, and it's definitely one of those kids where my mom had me in like every possible activity, and was always, an overachiever in school. And so I think that the fact that I was very, very driven really led into where I am today, and I ended up going to Cornell. And that's where things like shifted a lot for me too, was when I started to have a lot of health issues start to crop up, and I felt very angry for a while too, because I was like, wait, I'm like on this path of like doing all these things, and I can't have anything holding me back. So I think that's what really kind of shaped me a lot too, is that I had a really, my childhood went pretty well for the most part, and then I think a lot of these things started to really happen later on that made me reevaluate things and kind of change my outlook.
So you didn't really start experiencing any health issues until college?
Right. So about in high school, I had a couple of random things go on where, and always doctors were like, oh, that's just so weird and strange. Like they never put two and two together. I went on a school trip, my first time ever traveling to Europe, and my legs swelled up and I couldn't get my shoe back on after the flight. It was so embarrassing. I was like, I can't get my sneaker back on. Like my leg is just swollen. And then it went down about 2 weeks later, and doctor's like, oh, well, you know what? She's at that age where she's probably like, starting to get her period. So maybe it's related to that.
Oh my God.
So and then I started happening again like a year later, and I was on a college campus doing college classes before college, and they're like, oh, well, what are you eating at the campus? Because maybe you're eating salty food, and that's what it is. So,
oh my God, Jess, I didn't know this part of your story.
So it was always like told these different things, and then I had my eyes were super itchy all the time. I had, this is super weird, I had 4 extra rows of eyelashes growing into my eye, like scratching my eye all the time. And like, that's
Wow.
super rare, super strange. My eye doctor had never seen it. He's like, this is fascinating. It turns out it's actually all related to like one condition. But like for so long, I had multiple doctors tell me like this. And I remember thinking, it was actually a joke among my friends. Like they literally had like a hashtag on like Twitter when Twitter was a thing, be like Jess Anson problems. Like just random problems are always happening to me. And that's how I felt though too. It's like, why is this happening to me? Like me again.
Mm-hmm.
Which was really frustrating though too. I would laugh it off to people like, haha, yeah. But at the same time, I was freaking out internally.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's going on?
Mm-hmm. So when did you, 1, start putting names to what was happening to you, and 2, did you have to do it, or did a doctor finally tell you?
I had to do it.
You had to do it. So yeah. What was that like?
I had a few doctors started proposing different surgeries and procedures. So I had a hernia surgery. I was an athlete, and so I had a hernia surgery. And then I had the surgery, and after they did it, they said, we actually didn't find a hernia. You just have a lump, and we don't know what it is. I'm like, well, that's concerning. And I still have like a lump to this day. It turns out like that, those are lymph nodes are right there. So I had swollen lymph nodes, but like no one was recognizing it as that. It was just like, oh, well, you're an athlete, so it must be hernia. And that's when I started becoming a little bit skeptical. And then I started researching. I heard a vascular surgeon mention that I might have lymphedema. And so I started really like researching the internet. I found that there was a test for it. So after I had studied abroad, and this is later on in college, but I had studied abroad in college, and I didn't have a lot of my tools with me. When I was studying abroad, so I was backpacking in New Zealand and camping, doing all these cool things, and it was a really great experience. But the entire time, I didn't see like any of the bones in like my knee or ankle or foot, and I was
Wow.
like, and I was like a skinny person too, so I was like, this is really weird and kind of freaking me out. So that summer I found this test that you could do. I went to a hospital I could do it, and they confirmed that I did have lymphedema. So it's like, perfect. Like, now I know what this is. What's next? And there is like, no, what's next? It was like, well, there's no cure, and it's progressive, and you just have to deal with it. And I remember I was so stressed out. I didn't like do anything for the rest of that summer. I actually ended up with shingles that week because I was so stressed out that I just like broke down. It's like, well, now I figured it out, but I just was told now I can't do anything about it. And
Right.
I was going to my senior year of college, and I was thinking, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? Like, I have to find a job, I have to do all these things, and now I'm being told I have to deal with this shitty thing that's only going to get worse. And so it sent me into a really, really dark place.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. So I know you well now, and I know that you know your body more than probably any doctor ever will because of everything you've gone through. But when you realized that you had gone to so many different doctors and they all were either telling you the wrong thing or they were just simply not telling you the right thing, and you ended up having to self-diagnose a pretty serious condition, it sounds like you at first felt relief because you were like, well, now I have a name to it. It's not just a question anymore. But was that frustrating? And do you feel like that is something that like more people are having to do than they should be? And like, just kind of what's your stance on this concept of self-diagnosing yourself, especially when doctors are just straight up wrong? And they're only human. I'm not like trying to, make doctors wrong here, but it's just an amazing story.
Yes, I think a big part of it just comes down to the way that we train people in our medical system. We focus on one particular thing, and that's just like the nature of how things are. And so I think that as we learn that there's a lot more to the body and like a lot more systems than just, this is your circulation system and like it carries blood and your heart pumps it. And we learn like, wait, there's things like hormones and like your lymphatic system, all these different things, and how do they tie in and play into one another? I think that a lot of as we learn more about like different like autoimmune conditions and like things that other people like self-diagnose themselves with or like know that there's some type of underlying root cause, I think that really is something that I think some doctors are paying attention to, but it's just something that comes down to the fact that you kind of have to do your own research and like
Yeah.
be your own best advocate, because there's like no one out there is like looking out for you as much as like you could look out for yourself. So it's a really frustrating process, but I know there's definitely not just with lymphedema, but a lot of other conditions that people have had to do similar things. I think particularly women as well, I think have to often like put their foot down or like say like, something is actually wrong. Like this is not just something I'm making up in my head.
Right.
So I think it's, yeah.
And so how would you recommend to other people, mostly women, that you do get more in touch with your body? Like, are there daily things you do? And we might talk more about this as a bigger philosophy later on, but is there anything that comes to mind?
The big one was journaling, and I still do that. And because it's so easy you start to, if you don't like really pay close attention to like how you're feeling, you might like kind of forget like, okay, like you remember like the highlights. And then I do that a lot too, is I'll look back at like college or certain times that I enjoyed and like, and I realized like, wait, I was actually like, I was enjoying myself and doing cool things. And if you look back at like your own social media, you're like, wow, I'm doing like, that was great. But then you realize like, okay, like I actually was anxious about these things. Like I was really fatigued and I don't know why. Or, I've had like a bunch of things where I was very like, I've had periods where I just get nauseous and like just not be able to like eat for days and things like that. I'm like, okay, like, I actually would forget about those things if I didn't journal them. And so it's funny now, like my doctors who know me now, they like know I come in with like a whole stack of information and like these are like my theories and what I think is going on. And it actually helps me make the best of those appointments. I had a period where I was super skeptical and like angry about doctors, which is just not productive at all. But then I'm like, all right, now I just need to educate them on like what my condition is, where the specialists are, what are some of the types of like treatments I'm interested in, what their thoughts are, and gather all those thoughts from different sources and come up with my own kind of plan. And I mean, it's kind of like going for second opinions, and it's just kind of doing it more often than I would like. But I started kind of viewing it as almost like a school project or something.
Yeah.
You know, you have to make it a game in your head, because if you start to get very upset, like, oh my God, this is my body, what's happening to it? No one can help me. It's a really bad spiral. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I'm like a detective. And it sounds so silly, but that's like these like mind games I always like kind of have to play with myself.
Yeah, no, I love it. Otherwise you're losing sleep because you're making up like crazy things going on that just feel totally unsolvable. So really amazing advice. Okay. So going back to your story, you get this diagnosis, you're totally stressed out. You get shingles because you're like, what the hell am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? I literally don't know what to do. What does it actually look like? How is this changing your day-to-day life now that you know you have this, or that it's even just showing up more?
Yeah, so I started to break down and like wear compression garments like all the time.
Okay.
So on like a flight, I wear one that's like one that goes from my toes all the way up to my upper thigh. They're not cute and really uncomfortable. So I started wearing that all the time. I still do to this day. It's been like 10 years I've been wearing that. I wasn't wearing it consistently. But it was just, that was very frustrating. But also I started paying a lot more attention to my diet, even though doctors told me that diet wouldn't really have an impact, and it definitely has a huge impact.
Yeah.
And I met other people online too with my condition, and like the same thing is that like once I started paying attention to my diet, like limiting alcohol, which that took me a few years to do, but that one actually has helped a lot as well. And also just like journaling how different foods affected my body. So it became really obvious when I did certain things that I would have like a flare up or an experience. And then I also was told I shouldn't work out. So I didn't work out for a couple of years, which also kind of really impacted my mental health. So I was always an athlete. But then my friend took me to a yoga class, and I was so not about it. I was like, I was never a dancer. Like, I'm not flexible. This sounds like a horrible idea. She's like, too bad. Like, I bought you like this intro pack to this local studio. So I went, and then by the second class, I was like, I feel like my limbs feel a little bit lighter and not so heavy and tight, which was making me really tired because my limbs were literally heavy, filled with fluid. And I remember telling my mom, like, I think this is helping me. I'm not sure. So I started like actually measuring my legs and actually just like taking note of how I felt. And then I became like obsessed. And even actually, if I would stop doing yoga for a little bit, my mom would be like, please go to yoga. Like, you're so stressed out. It would help me mentally, but also like physically. I was like, first thought it was in my head, but then I was like, wait, this is actually helped me. Because I started physical therapy. No, the exercises were exercises I was doing in yoga. And I'd rather do them in yoga class than in like a hospital environment.
Right. Totally. I love that you share this, and I don't want to sound, I don't know how to say this. I'm obviously not a doctor, and I don't want to pretend that I have any medical expertise, but I've heard time and time again, similar stories to how things that seem either chronic or uncurable or just like completely out of our control can be not usually cured, but very much improved with things like diet and just exercise. For example, my dad, when he was still alive, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes very late in life, which is very unusual. It's usually what happens to kids. Type 2, and it was weird because people kind of assumed it was type 2 diabetes, like it was a result of his diet, and it wasn't. His pancreas just failed. It was not his diet at all. He was actually, I think, born with it, and it just showed up later in life. But my point is, the doctors told him, you just can't produce insulin, period. That is what it is. You're always going to have to be inserting the amount of insulin that your pancreas was producing. And he pretty much went paleo after doing some extensive research on his own about that. And I don't think he ever fully stopped having to use some insulin, but his need for it dramatically went down by going paleo. And no doctor ever told him that. It was through, researching. And I think he talked to some people doing CrossFit and stuff. So anyway, my point is, there are so many ways holistically that we can ease our own conditions. And, Jess, I have terrible scoliosis, and I have stopped really eating gluten because it's inflammatory. And I have noticed that my back is just less irritated. So I really love that you kind of just broke that down for us. Okay, so you start falling in love with yoga, and this is kind of where you and I start to cross in your journey. So you fall in love with yoga so much, you decide that this could actually be something bigger than you. So tell us a little bit more about how that goes now.
Yeah, so post-college, I started working full-time at like a really demanding job. And then during that time period, I was very lonely during that time period, I think, going from college to like this role. And then I decided like I'm gonna join a yoga teacher training. So I did that while I was working full-time, which was kind of stressful, but I learned so much. And I originally did it like to learn more about the practice for myself. I didn't have this intention of like teaching others or creating a business at all. And then I started sharing that I was doing, and I also didn't share that I had lymphedema with anyone. It was like a big secret. I worked there for 3 years and no one knows that I had anything wrong with me, which was really bad because I had some of I had like times where like my pants, like literally like wide leg slacks, like split open because my leg was so swollen because I just was like, didn't have the time to take care of myself. So I was working like 70, 80 hours a week, like a crazy person. So that's when I was like, I have to do something, like something's got to give. And then I quit my job, like with nothing else lined up because I was just so burnt out and was just focusing on yoga and teaching yoga. And which like was not much money. I was running around to classes that were like 5 a.m. classes at local studios. So I was taking whatever I could get. And during that time, I started sharing a little bit about like having lymphedema. And like some people started noticing that like I had like compression on in some of my like, yoga photos. And then like one day I shared a photo on World Lymphedema Day with myself in like a challenging yoga pose with compression on, like very visible, like a black compression stocking. And like a whole bunch of people started just reaching out to me. They're like, I didn't know you like do this. Like, when did you start yoga? Like it was before or after you had lymphedema? Like just, yeah, I just was like, wait, this is actually like really eye-opening, and like, there's a lot of interest, and there's something here, like it's helped me, and I feel like there's so many people that could also be helped by it. I spent a long time thinking lymphedema was rare, and it's not rare at all. They think that about 10 million Americans have it, and it's more than people with like MS, muscular dystrophy, like Parkinson's, AIDS, ALS, like all combined.
Wow.
But it's just like such a lack of education. So that's when I started thinking like, wait, there's something here. Like I'm angry that people don't know about this. I have a way that can help it. Like I just feel like obligated to share it.
I love that part of your story so much because I vividly can picture that post in my head that you shared on World Lymphedema Day and how stunning you looked and just how many people probably felt less alone that day just because you shared that. And I think it shows so much courage. And so from there, you start getting this traction. You also are already a yoga instructor. And I know that your business really is so interconnected with different ways that you help women be their own advocates. You help people that have chronic illness. You specifically help women that have lymphedema. Tell me a little bit more about where, how you kind of saw this as something and where you've taken it since then.
Yeah, so one of the first things that I started sharing about doing yoga is that I had a lot of people start reaching out to me with lymphedema saying like, they're like beginner yogis, and like I went to yoga class and the instructor didn't know about lymphedema, and I felt like I couldn't keep up. And it's a lot of yoga classes that you go to in the Western world now are like they're like workout classes.
Right. They're like Soul Cycle for yoga.
Yeah, and so I was like, there are so many, not that there's anything wrong with those classes, like I love those type of classes, but that you also need to know. I was like, wait, there's like definitely a niche here where people need to know, not just with lymphedema, but with like anything going on with their body, like how can they confidently walk into a yoga class and find the things that work for them and do those things, and also like have that confidence to, like I know for a long time I would just push through whatever pose the instructor said because that's just my competitive nature. So it took me a long time to like let go of that ego and be like, you know what, like I'm not going to do that pose today, and I'm going to sit here and do this, like have my legs up the wall in the corner, and that's totally chill. But like for someone too, this is your biggest insecurity. You don't want to look like you're like disabled or unable to do it. So I think that's why I started realizing like, okay, I have something I can do here, where I started just sharing like little hacks. Like, all right, if you have lymphedema in your arm, maybe like down dog doesn't work for you, but you can actually do these poses at home where you lean against the wall and it's less pressure on your arms. So just little things like that, that just aren't, a lot of instructors just don't know, just because it's like impossible to know, like, have like poses ready for everyone's different thing.
Right.
And that's when I started thinking, like, okay, there's something here where there's people too in a lot of areas where they don't have access to a bunch of yoga studios. Like, I live in New York City, so there's so much access to like every different thing you can imagine. But like, what about people who, don't know anyone else with their condition and feel like they're unheard and don't know how to explain it? And then also there's only like one local yoga studio. Like, what do they do? So that's when I started to share more resources online and also work with people online. And at first too, I thought it was kind of like strange. It was like, oh, teaching yoga online, like, how does that work? But I think also just people knowing if there's like someone on the other end who can like just give them like little tips, verbal cues, which a lot of classes are mostly verbal cues, like.
Right.
And how to do those things and how they can take that into their own home practice and, just create those like daily self habits and routines that will help them, manage not only just like condition, but like manage your life really.
Oh my gosh, Jess, your story gives me butterflies every time. I'm so just moved by everything you're doing and know that you're making the world such a better place. So this is a show for entrepreneurs, as you know, I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship. So talk to me a little bit about, fears that you went through. I think all entrepreneurs fear putting themselves out there. They fear what people will think. They fear what people are going to say, especially I commonly hear people are afraid of like what people from middle school or high school say that they haven't talked to, which always cracks me up. I felt the same way. And it's like, why do I care? But we do. And I think that you probably even had that to more of an extreme because you have to be very vulnerable in your business. You have to talk about as something that's a very challenging part in your life, frequently doing yoga, doing any sort of fitness. You're also showing your body. So how did you move through any initial fears, and do you still move through fears of putting yourself out there?
Yeah, I definitely, I had to like reevaluate who I was spending time with.
Beautiful tip.
And I have, certain friends are like my best friends that I would even say to them, like, before I'd post something, like, what do you think about this? Does this make me like, because I was so nervous putting things out there, and it was really telling to me by different people's reactions. And then there were certain people in my life who'd be like, why are you doing that? Or why did you put that? And just make me really doubt what I was doing. And I mean, I had a time too, where I literally remember being out with friends and they were like, what are you doing? Like, why did you just post that? Like, when I showed up to like a brunch, I literally deleted the Instagram post. I was like so embarrassed. And then I started to realize, I'm like, wait, all these like people, I'm like, is this exactly who I want to be spending my time with? Like, everyone here is like miserable about like their own things, and now just bringing me down as well. And so I started to just really spend more time with people that were basically just doing cool things and like, that were more like mission driven and like focused on, making themselves a better person, and not just like especially in New York, you get this like climbing into this like rat race of like getting up the corporate ladder and such. I just felt like I realized I was like, all right, I've been in this like very high intensity environment from like Cornell to my jobs, and I was like, I need to like expand my circle a little bit, because I definitely felt like things were lacking for me. So there's definitely plenty of people like I still stayed friends with, but then there's people that I started to just slowly start to spend less time with. I was just like, oh, I'm a little bit busy and still busy. Now I've been busy for like 2 years. But I think that doesn't, when people who start to like make you really question, like, what, like, well, why, like, I would think that like, well, do I have to like uphold this perfect image with you because I've been doing it and like I'm not perfect, and it's like really impacting me when I'm just trying to go and act like I'm something that I'm not. And so now it's funny though, because there's a lot of people who think it's like, more people think it's really cool that I share things, and I have more people that come out of the blue and reach out. I had someone from college, a girl in my sorority I hadn't talked to in years, and she reached out. She's like, my mom is a writer, and she's like writing an article about lymphedema, and I want, like, can you like connect with her and talk to her? I think it's so cool everything you're doing. And I'm like, oh, like that's just like things like that. Like, just make me like happy. Like, okay, so like people are like paying attention. If they're not saying anything, they think it's like actually pretty cool and not yeah, I guess that's like, you just have to recognize that if people are bringing you down, like they have something else going on with themselves.
Awesome, awesome advice. I mean, you know how strongly I feel about that. That's why my business is structured around groups and community and bringing people together. Do you think that because of what you went through and just having to be your own advocate kind of through force, do you think that that's given you more confidence that is now helping you as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's made me, especially as I connect with people, like just way more confident in like sharing my stories. For so long, I was just hiding so much in
Mm,
my life. And that was just really stressful overall. And even
right.
when I first started teaching yoga, people didn't know I had lymphedema. And I felt very weird when people, so whenever I taught someone with some type of physical ailment, they would look, people would say things like, oh, like, I'm just like, I'm not born flexible, or I'm not like, I'm not like just born like you. And I remember just thinking, wait, like I was born with so much stuff. And I'm like, is that, and I would kind of always want to say something, but it wouldn't be like the time and place. And so that's what I started realizing too. I'm like, maybe I should be a little bit more vulnerable because I'm acting so perfect that people can't relate to me.
Mm,
I think that's really important. It's like people think that you're someone that they can't relate to. It's like, why are they going to want to work with you as well? Like they can't see themselves like growing into whatever traits you have that they want to exhibit as well.
right. Yeah. That's kind of like, I always try to say you have to give like your before. You can't just show your after because people won't see how they can get to your after, like if they don't recognize your before. So that's a great segue into my next question, which is what would you say are, one, two, or three like main benefits that you are able to help clients and people that you work with on?
I think the biggest thing is how people recognize that whatever it is their thing, right? Everyone has something, whether it's like a chronic illness or like a mental illness or, anything that's going on, helping them recognize that that's actually isn't something that is it's a setback, but isn't something that like takes away from who they are as a person, but actually adds to it. I felt like for so long, especially even like dating, is really bad with when you go and are like dating someone and you're like, I would think like, oh, this makes me like less of a person, like that I deal with this. And I always like felt like that. And then now actually like later on I started like, well, actually like on days like, what do you do in your free time? Like, well, like I actually like advocate for like this like chronic illness that I have. And I remember people being like, wow, it's actually pretty cool. And so it was interesting that it's just like learning that instead of it's also how you present it, but just learning it's like actually makes you a more interesting person, but also shows, you have a lot more strength than you think you didn't have. So that's one of the biggest things is, it's really a mindset thing comes down to with working with people on that.
I love that, Jess. What a beautifully, beautifully said. So you are an alum of my program, Scale Your Side Hustle. You are also currently in my mastermind and having experienced that type of community. What would you say to someone out there who is feeling like people in their life don't really get what they're going through if they're trying to build a business or they feel lonely? And is there just anything you want to share about the experiences you've had in those spaces?
Yes, I'd say I think it's some of the best decisions I ever made because I probably sat on the fence. Like I sat on the fence just putting out my first Instagram post about lymphedema for over a year. I almost did it on like the year before on World Lymphedema Day, and then I like held off on it and waited a whole year, just because I was so concerned about what people in my life would think. And so once I started connecting with other people, like both online and in person and in the programs, and having people to lean on, especially when I would feel like I have no one to talk to about this. And a lot of times too, people in your life, they're not going to understand. It's okay. It's not a problem, but you just have to have other people to rely on in those times to like understand like what you're going through. Because I think then it's very easy to get stuck. And once you start feeling alone, like there's no one that has your back on things, that's when everything's like a downward spiral. But I think community is the most important things. I recognized community was so important because before I joined those programs, I'd started connecting with people in online communities that had my condition, and that was really like life-changing for me because like some of those people I've met up with in person and have like become, some of them I have never met in person, but like I feel like they're like good friends because they're people I've been able to like talk to and learn from and vice versa. So it's just like, that's I think one of the beauty of like social media too, is being able to connect with people that you otherwise like may never, cross in real life.
Yeah, beautifully put. I couldn't agree more. And that's why I created the Mastermind, because I couldn't have done anything that I've done without it. And it's been amazing to see people lean on each other. And of course you have me, who will not let you stay stagnant, even if you wanted to. So we definitely keep you moving. Okay. Well, it has been amazing to hear your story. I've heard it and I get chills every time, because you are such a good example of how important it is to get out of your own way, because so often we can make our fears about us. What if I put myself out there? What if people are mean to me? What if no one believes in me? What if no one actually picks up on this? And, you are such a good example of how entrepreneurship often is not about you, because it's about the people you're helping. And I think you've really kept that in mind through the struggles, through the things that I know you still go through. I know that your health it's not like you were diagnosed and then it was done. And you've really just been so selfless through it all. And you're an amazing role model to your community, as well as to the entrepreneurs out there who are afraid. So I really am grateful that you shared your story today.
Oh, thank you. I don't know how to respond to that. That's so sweet.
It's absolutely true. Okay, I have three kind of like quick questions for you. You ready?
Okay.
Okay. What is your go-to when you're having a really bad day?
I let myself have some ice cream and I just have to let myself be sad a little bit, and bottling it up never works. So yeah, just let myself some ice cream, maybe some red wine, and just chill for a few moments and be.
Yeah, perfect. I love it. What are you most proud of in your business journey so far, in your entrepreneurial journey?
I think the thing I'm most proud of is, I guess it just comes back down to the feedback that I get from people. When I get feedback from someone, like just even people who I haven't worked with, who are like just seeing you move on every day and like continue to do you every day, like that helps me like get out of bed in the morning, or on days where I felt like super depressed and like I couldn't do it. Just hearing something like that, it makes me like so happy, because I definitely have days that I'm down. And so just is like this positive like feedback loop where I'm like, wait, I have to do this because there's other people who are watching me and who want to see me do well, and I want to see them do well. So I guess that's like the thing I'm most proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. That's incredible. Have you had a business book, or is there a podcast that you listen to that kind of helps you stay in a strong mindset?
Let's see. I think the most recent, well, one that I always love to go back to is You're a Badass. That one it's just like so many like little gold nuggets in there that I'm like that, and I've reread it a few times, because I definitely have times where I get super down on myself and like, what am I doing? And I read that and I'm like, okay, like I got this. Like I totally can do this. And I mean, it's just so right, is that this like journey of entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster sometimes. So it really helps me level set some and kind of get back to a happy medium when I'm starting to get down on anything.
Good one. Great. All right. Well, final question. Where can people find out more about you?
My Instagram is one of the best places to reach me. It's at Jess Rose Anson, Anson is my last name. And on there too, it's like I share basically everything I'm doing, but also any types of, fun things that I'm sharing. So that's probably the best place to reach and follow along with me.
Love it. And I will just say, as someone who has used yoga with pain I've had in my life, I love your Instagram for that too. So I really think you're just a great yoga person to follow, or health and wellness in general. It doesn't have to be specific. It doesn't have to be about any chronic illness. You're just a very inspiring person. So thank you again, Jess. I so appreciate it. And I hope you guys love this, Visionaries. Jess's Instagram and website will be on the show notes. So if you want to go head on over to my website, you can also get to it there. So thanks for sharing with us, Jess.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Leah. Bye.
All right, Visionaries. Talk to you soon.